Okay, guys, I wanted to hop in here and I want to share something with you real quick. I wanted to share some stuff from Daniel 8 with some things I've seen in the news, and I wanted to share with you some math that I've been holding on to because it seems to point to something specific. Now, we're going to start off with the concept of an age and the time frame within an age. So if we go back and we look at what's been going on since creation, we've got roughly, if we calculate it out and use a little bit of reasoning, it's about 6,000 years. So if that's the case, you can count in about 2,000 year increments. Now, again, I may be wrong about this. I'm just showing you what I'm seeing, what I'm coming up with, and what's being revealed. Trying to put some puzzle pieces together, trying to find evidence. So, if that's the case, and the church started after Jesus ascended, the general accepted time was 32 AD. So, if Jesus ascended in 32 AD, and the church started right after that same year, maybe 33 AD, but we'll stick with 32 just for our math, and we can talk about the adjustments later. So let's say every year is a 2,000 years. Every age is 2,000 years. The first one, there was no law. Then the second one, there was law. And the third one has been grace. So let's add 2,000 years. Whoop, I didn't do that right. 32 AD plus 1,000 years. That leaves you at 2032. Now, Jesus won't allow 7 years of his 1,000 year millennial reign to be tribulation. So you'd have to back up from that time in order to account for the 7 year tribulation, because that's that final moment where everything's going to change and usher in the millennial reign. So let's subtract 7 years. That puts us at 2025. So if the year range we're looking at is 2025, that's just a couple of years away. Now, in 2 years, roughly, well, not even 2 years. Well, yeah, it'll be about 2 years, because it'll be in November of 2024 that we'll vote for the president. There's a high probability that Donald Trump could get back in. I find it interesting that his last name is Trump. I find it interesting there's a whole bunch of stuff surrounding his history and his life that seem to be extremely biblical and prophetic. The patriarch of the Trump family, if you go back and dig into history, her name is very interesting. Where she came from and what she did is very interesting. There's a lot of history behind this man and his family. But I find his name interesting, and that he was the leader of this world. Now, what does the Bible refer to as leaders, or use as a reference to leaders in this world? Horns. Mountains. Main one that caught my attention was horns. Trump, horn. I don't know. Kind of easy to put that reference together. Okay, now let's go over to Daniel 8 real quick. We're going to hold on to that math. Because Daniel 8 has some key verses. And a lot of people say Daniel 8 has already been fulfilled. Yeah, I get it. That's what everybody's been teaching. That's the general consensus. I challenge you to go read it for yourself. Because when I read it, it doesn't seem at all to me like it's something that happened 2,000 years ago already, or even more. At all. Because there's key verses at the end of this where Gabriel is giving the interpretation of it, saying it is the latter time of the indignation. Well, the indignation in the Bible is always referring to the tribulation. So clearly this chapter is for that time frame. Now, with that in mind, we go through it and we take a look at it. Now, I've read this through before. We'll just go through. We're going to catch on to some key things in here. Verse 5 in Daniel 8. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Now, goat in the Bible always seems to refer to the scapegoat. Always seems to refer to the lesser or Gentiles or something like that. So in this chapter, it calls them the nation of Greece, or in the King James it was Grecia, which is Grecian territory. If you look at our architecture, because Greece as a nation, they're not going to attack anybody. And besides, they're north, because this whole thing's talking about Iran, Persia. It's really easy to look up these references. I've done it in other videos. Greece is nothing. Greece isn't going to attack anybody. So that's not talking about Greece. It can't be. They would have to really make a big change in just a few years in order to fit this math we've got going on. But there's none of that in the future. There's no way. But it says they're going to come across the surface of the whole earth, not touching the ground. That's an airstrike. That's a big airstrike. That's a lot of jets. So to me, when I read this, immediately it seems to indicate to me this is talking about the U.S. We have this capability, and we have a notable horn. Now, no nation has a single horn or a single leader. There's always a coalition, a group of multiple. There may be one prime minister, but there's other governing factors surrounding them. The U.S. is the only nation that has a single leader. Now, there's a vice president, but this president, this is the focal point. Notable horn. Other nations have multiple horns in their leadership. We have one. Like even Netanyahu becoming prime minister, there's still another guy over him and a bunch of guys under him, and they all govern together. There's no single leader there. We are the only nation with a single leader. We have the House, we have the Senate, these are just groups, but they're not part of the governing factor. The president is the single horn. So this is key, and it seems to be referring to us. Now there's another key thing here, is when you go down to the interpretation, verse 21, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. Well, it can't be the kingdom of Greece, because number one, Greece isn't a kingdom. Greece is a nation. A kingdom is many nations attached together. So what would this be? Kingdom is going to be many nations. I don't know, like maybe a melting pot of many nationalities. I don't know. Greece, well, all our architecture, all our laws, all that stuff is all Greco-Roman in nature. Every bit of it. Go up to Washington and just look at the buildings. That's all Greco-Roman architecture. But the key here is the large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Every nation has always had kings. All nations have, at some point, have had some king, multiple kings. America's never had a king because America started just shy of 300 years ago. So America wasn't around back then. We've never had a king. However, what we see going on now, it looks like. And there's a lot of referencing to kings surrounding Trump and right now Biden because of some rather derogatory things involving what he's doing. But we've never had a king. We've always had a government, a president. Never had a king. What would it take to make somebody a king? Somebody who's a dictator. Somebody who is the last leader. This line is the final line. Somebody who gets to just make decrees or freely sign executive orders. And the way they've been doing it now, they're putting themselves in the state of being a king. It would be a monarchy, like Queen Elizabeth and now Charles, unfortunately. Y'all haven't seen anything or heard anything about him, have you? There's a reason for that. That whole situation is going to play its biggest role in the tribulation. So when I read this is, to me, this is more and more starting to key in on America. Because we are a standalone nation. And have we not been the scapegoat for Israel? We're always coming to bat for them. I believe this attack on this ram, on this Persia, I believe this attack is going to be because of an attack they make. Look at the threats that they're doing right now. Because when you read all the details in here and you look them up, it's literally right in Iran. So I think this is going to kick off as an attack. They're probably going to attack Israel. And if that's the case, which they're threatening to do it now, they've got all the armament, they're ready to go. Israel's scrambling because they know, it's already been starting. They're going to make a major attack, and we're going to respond. We're partners in the 70-nation coalition that they have started in 2019, right? 70 nations, which is 7 groups of 10, horn with little horns and diadems. I don't know. Great Red Dragon. Just saying. Seems to connect pretty clearly. Now there's another element in here that might even fulfill it even more, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, to me, this seems to be pointing it to America. Now we can argue about semantics, but I'm taking this thing as a whole of what it says. If you haven't read Daniel 8, go read it. It's very interesting, and it really starts to jump out at you certain details in here. Now, this is not something that happened in the past. This is a future prophecy. It did not happen in the past because it's talking about the Antichrist at the end of this chapter. And it gives a very key thing that's going to tie into our math. It's something that just dawned on me this morning. But with Netanyahu getting back in office, that keyed me in on this. What if Trump gets back in 2024? Now, watch this. We're going to get to the math here in a minute, and it might actually jump off the screen at you. So, to me, this is America. This is talking about America doing this. Now, after all that happens, after he wipes them out, therefore, verse 8, the male grew very great. But when he became strong, now our nation isn't very great right now. It's actually fairly weak. Very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken. Death, rapture maybe? I don't know. And in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. 4 nations out of 1, branching off, going 4 different directions, with 4 different ideologies, with 4 different beliefs. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that the Ottoman Empire was broken up into 4, because Epiphanes passed it down to his 4 generals. Yeah, but his 4 generals never did anything. It just all fell apart completely. This isn't talking about that. That was a play that Satan was trying to do, and it didn't work. This is much more specific. And our nation, they've been talking about this for years, of breaking this country up into 4 or 5 pieces. More hints and clues leading me to believe it's talking about America. Now, right below that, verse 9, and out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. That never happened with Epiphanes' 4 generals. Never happened. He wasn't even the first king, so it takes him out of the running anyway. But that never happened with him. This little horn. Now, we know who the little horn is, right? Antichrist. So obviously this didn't happen back then. Obviously. Painfully obvious. And, verse 10, it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts, that's the angels, and some of the stars to the ground, and trampled them. That's the ones that followed him. He even exalted himself as high as the priest of the host. That would be Jesus. Remember, we talked about that this morning. And by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Who's going to take away the daily sacrifices? Satan, Antichrist. So this is a future prophecy. So I'm only going to touch on some key things. I recommend you read this and consider this, because I think we're looking at a very future prophecy that's currently being fulfilled. So, listen to this, verse 13. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. 2,300 days. Let's jump back here real quick. 2,300 days in years. That's 6.3 years. So that's 9 months taken out of a 7 year tribulation, say, which would leave 6 months or 6 years and 3 months left. I find that number interesting. Because what that seems to tell me is that this stuff, now, this could also be fulfilled at the same time the seals are being opened. Because he's got to be revealed at that time frame. When the first seal is broken, he comes. He's revealed. Goes out to conquering and to conquer. With a bow with no arrows. Political guy. That can kind of tie into this. He's going to kick out those other horns politically, and he's going to rise up and take over their territory. Being a leader. Those 4 horns are 4 leaders. He's going to grow towards the glorious land. What's the glorious land? Israel. He's got eyes on Israel. Now again, I don't know what the timeline is on all this stuff. I'm just showing you some things that I'm seeing here, and you can consider that for yourself. But I find this very interesting. 6.3 years, 6 years and 3 months, which leaves 9 months out of a 7-year span. 9 months. Isn't there a particular battle that happens in Israel where it takes some 9 months to burn all the equipment? Am I wrong on that? Or 9 months to bury the dead or something like that. Interesting. Just throwing it out there. 2,300 days. Now let's go to our math. So let's say 2025 would be the back end, or the front end of the tribulation, if we're using 32 AD as our thing. So 2025, move forward 9 months. Now, if you understand the dates, we vote people in and people take office and start to do some calculations here, you can start to pin some of this down to a month if the math is correct. There's a possibility, now again, we don't know all the details or all the timings of everything, and that's on purpose, but you can start to pin some stuff down to a month or two as to when some of this stuff might start. So let's say, just for instance, Trump gets elected in 2024. He'll take office in January of 2025. Again, I'm just spitballing here. Could it be he'll have a 9-month run and then everything changes? Possible. See, I'm just saying a lot of this math is kind of overlapping here. It's kind of adding up here. Kind of interesting. A lot of these details are really standing out. Let's cover the last couple of things I want to bring up here. So he's telling him, look, I'm making known to you what will happen in the latter time of the indignation. For at the appointed time the end shall be. That's the second coming, at latter time. The ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. So he's giving an interpretation of what this is. That's Iran. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, four kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. America is doomed. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. So you're getting a time frame coming together here. Now, it could be short, it could be long. We don't know. There's a lot of details we don't have. But what I'm getting to a point here. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. Rich people, you think you've made allegiance with the Antichrist? No. He's going to wipe you out too. You just don't know it yet. He shall even rise against the Prince of Princes. That's Jesus Christ. So this is Antichrist. But he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evenings and the mornings which was told is true. Therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. Another key verse is verse 17. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, Son of Man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. That whole vision he was given was not in the past. It's a future prophecy. The time frame we're being given here, to me, stands out. 2,300 days. 6 years and 3 months. Now, there's some other math you could do, and I don't know if it will come out correctly. But if we go over here, we can try it. If we add 70 AD plus 2300, that gives you 2370. Well, that goes outside of a generation. Fig tree generation. We're the fig tree generation. We see what's happening. He said, you see this happening with Israel? Boom, you know you're there. We see it. Boom, we're here. Israel has never been greater. So 2370 is way out there. But what if? Let's see here. Back this up. Let's see, it was 2025 plus 6 equals 2031. And then you add 3 more months there. So if 2032 is the outside of it, that drops the timing right in. You just got to back up a few months. See, the month part, I don't have my other computer. The month part is the hard part to calculate. But again, you start to do the math, you can pin this down to a month or a couple months. So if you take the 2300, add it to 2025, saying 2025 will be let's just say somewhere in there is the beginning of the tribulation. I'm spitballing. Keep that in mind. You move forward 6 years and 3 months, because the Daniel 8 says it's going to take place at the end of the end of the indignation. Because it talks about, let me bring this up as a reference, because it talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary. Where was that at? Was it at the beginning? Let's see here. There's one part here where it talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary. Right here, verse 11. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now, his meaning Jesus. Now, that happened in 70 AD. Now, that temple really wasn't God's anymore because they corrupted it. But the Antichrist took away the daily sacrifices in 70 AD because the temple was destroyed. I mean, God did it. He allowed it to happen. But you know he's supposed to make an agreement with them and then do that too. What, at the 3.5 year mark? Yeah, exactly. But then he's going to do away with all that stuff. But now there's supposed to be a cleansing that comes from this. Let me see if I can find that verse here. Right here. 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Verse 13. For 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Now let's go back and look at our math real quick, and let me just throw something at you. So, let's say the tribulation starts in 2025. Oops. Move forward, because we know the sanctuary gets cleansed at the end of the tribulation when Jesus returns. Now again, we don't exactly know how the timing is going to fall out, but there's just throwing the idea out there. Move forward 9 months into 2025. And then start your 2,300 days. So there's supposed to be a big battle. And then everybody's going to live in peace for a while. Well, if that happens at the beginning and it happens sometime in 2025, or even just it happens here any time now, there's your 9 months of them burying stuff and doing all this. It's supposed to be a huge battle. There's your 9 months. Then you drop your 2,300 days on the end of that, and boom, you're at 2032. Now that's just assuming that that's how our math is going to work out. 2032 being the end of the age of grace, 2,000 year age of grace. I could be wrong on it. I may have my math off. What I'm trying to do is just throw you an idea out there about how close we are. That's the whole goal of this. The point I'm trying to make is look how close we seem to be because how all this figures out with what we're seeing in the world today. So if it doesn't make sense, don't worry. But let's say the 7-year tribulation starts sometime in 2025. Jump ahead 9 months and start your 2,300 days till the sanctuary is cleansed, like Daniel says. Or 2,300 days till the sanctuary is cleansed. Then you finish it out to 2032. That would be enough time. For a nation to change, a leader, a horn to do what he's going to do, the big giant battle, because it's supposed to be a massive one, but maybe seeing overlapping battles here. That'd be enough time. And enough time for the seals to open. So the more I look at Daniel, the more I consider this very, very crude math. Don't think this is specific and something that is I'm saying is going to happen, because I don't know. There's still so many details I'm missing. But the more I look at it, the more I see that this is something that's going to start happening, or has already been happening. This is going to unfold, and it's unfolding before our eyes. We do know that there's supposed to be a great battle before everything happens. Before they have their 7-year peace agreement that comes in. Now this could be before it or after it. I don't know. Now we're right now in a weird time because we're in a time frame where literal days could make the difference. It's all going to depend on what we see happen in the future. Now, how does this relate to the rapture? Well, obviously the rapture is going to be before this time. We're in that season right now. See, next year is going to be a very interesting year because a lot of people got some plans on some things they're going to do next year. So 2023 is going to be a breakout year, I think. What happens after that? I don't know. I half expect them to take the administration out that's in there now and put a different administration in before the end of this current term. If that's the case, then there's more than enough time for all of this to unfold. We don't know, we'll see. But I find it very interesting how it seems to very specifically point to now. Now, let's say Jesus went in, there's a lot of people say 2030, or he went in 33 AD. 33 plus 2000. You get 2033. Still the right time frame. Still falls into the right time frame. So with what we see in the world today, with what we see over here in Daniel 8, and the specifics and the day count for 2,300 days, that's interesting to me. 2,300 days. And the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And if Jesus went up in 32 AD, and the church was started that same year, the age of grace started at that time. And these ages seem to run about 2,000 years. We're clearly looking at the right time frame here. We're clearly looking at this final age coming to an end and the tribulation overshadowing everything. We see aspects of the seals already active in the world. Not the seals themselves, but aspects of it, the build up to it. You can't just have this stuff happen instantly. It's got to have a build up. All this stuff has to have a build up. God uses his creation. So we're seeing that build up. We're witnessing this build up to this thing, this crescendo of when this stuff is going to happen. I mean, it's just war all the time right now. It's all they're doing, rattling sabers like crazy. They're moving their people. All the nations that the Bible says are going to be surrounding Israel with the intent that they're going to surround them for, it's happening right now. They're there. Literally there. Everything that the Bible said was going to happen right before the tribulation is active right now in the world. So, for your encouragement, if this is coming up right, now it's not going to be right, if this is even generally coming up right, what is that telling you? We're in 2022. If we're looking at 2025, say we're looking at 2032, back up 7 years. How much time are we looking at here? Just a few years. Just a little bit of time. And it's kind of obvious with everything that's going on. So there's very little, there literally is very little time left. Now, when the rapture is going to happen, I have no clue. I don't know how the Lord's going to plan this out because I'm not him, and he hasn't revealed it to me. He hasn't revealed it to anybody. There's a reason for that. He wants us always watching. But my hope in sharing this with you is to get you to take another opportunity to take another look, because what they've told us about Daniel 8 is a lie. Clearly, as Daniel 8 tells us, this is something for the indignation, a future time involving the Antichrist and Jesus Christ. It did not happen over 2,000 years ago. It's happening now. See, this whole book was for a time of the end. Well, the time of the end didn't happen back then. This is the time of the end. And I think there's more here that we need to find. And it may be that the book of Daniel is the next book we go into for our prophecies. I don't know yet. But what I want to make sure everybody understands is everything so far, all the evidence we've been given in the Bible, all the indicators we have in the world today are pointing to right now. We literally have very little time left. That's exciting to me. That's exciting. Now, what we do with this information is completely different. Are you going to use it and study more? Are you going to run with it and try to make a whole other doctrine out of it? Which I hope you don't. Or are you going to see it for what it is? I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to be a Berean. And I want to share this with you guys because it blesses me. If it looks like we're that close, if it looks like we're right here at the end of the age of grace, we know we're not going to be a part of the tribulation. We know Jesus isn't going to let 7 years of his 1,000-year millennial reign be tribulation. It's going to happen before that. It keeps us within Psalm 90:10, a generation of 70 years, 80 if by strength. But its boast is labor and sorrows. What year are we in from when Israel became a nation again? We're still in that time frame, folks. That matches up too. That's another math to take into account. When did Israel be declared a nation again? May 14th, 1948. All right, let's go back to our calendar, our calculator. 1948 plus 80. So if you take Psalm 90:10 and use it with Israel, take that 80 years and add it to when Israel became a nation again, which is the fig tree generation. We're in it. That puts you at 2028. Jesus said, "This generation shall not pass away until all these things are fulfilled." Four more years and you hit 2032. We're there. That math fits within what I just showed you. How interesting. How interesting. So if that's the case, what are we looking at here? Hello? We're there. Clearly we're there. There's very little time. Very little. Which means all this stuff that's going on, all these things that we're going through, it's about to come to a screeching halt. For us. Because we're going somewhere else. That's what he said he was going to do. He was going to take us somewhere else. Remember what Hebrews says? Hebrews 12. Let's see here. Hebrews 12. I forget which one it was. I'm about to Google it. Oh, sorry, Hebrews 9. Yeah, Hebrews 9. My bad. Hebrews 9. 28. Yeah. So Hebrews 9:28. Let me highlight this so I remember. So Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly wait for him, he will appear a second time apart from sin for salvation. That's not the second coming. That's completely different. To those who eagerly wait for him, to us, he's going to appear a second time. See, the second coming, he's coming for judgment. This is going to be a second time apart from sin. This is something different. He came the first time to save us. He's coming again to remove us, to save us for salvation. That will take you to 2 Thessalonians 2. Christ will, and all these people going on about, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible Christ is coming another time other than when he came before in the second coming. It does right here, Hebrews 9. He's coming a second time for those who eagerly wait for him. He will appear a second time apart from sin. The first time was to deal with sin for salvation. There's no salvation waiting at the second coming. That's not what that is for. This is something different. Amazing. So guys, it's short. It's shockingly short. Look at the time frame. 80 years puts us at 2028. If you take 32 AD and add 2000 to it for an age, it's 2032. Daniel talks about the same time frame. We're there. Boom, we're there. Again, we're missing a lot of details. But we can sure pick the season, and this is it. We're there. And there's no two ways around it. Now, right away, and I've had people ask me this, well, what if we hit 2032 and you realize you were wrong? Then I was very wrong. And I am completely willing to admit that. I miscalculated somewhere. I counted something wrong. But if that's the case, then there's a whole lot of stuff that has to stop happening. And there's a whole lot of stuff that has to be delayed. And there's a whole lot of prophecy that's not going to get fulfilled because it has a timestamp and an expiration date. And that expiration date is between now and 32 AD. These things have to happen in this because there's some other math I haven't showed you that other people are using, other people have done, that calculates it out to this time frame too, from all the way back then, in Daniel's time. I'm going to try something here. 2032 minus 6,000. So is that about when creation happened, maybe? Can't really count it like that because you have to go back 2,000 and then count back from there. So it would be 4,000 from 1 BC. Which is about right because they estimate that Moses and all the stuff that happened with Moses was like, 4,500 years. 4,500 BC. So yeah, it actually does calculate out. So even taking 2032 and backing up, it'll take you back to negative 4,000 or say negative 4,500, which is when they think it all kicked off. It in the 3968, I think, falls into what the Jews have calculated back to with the evidence they have. Real close. So the numbers are starting to align. The numbers are starting to match up. We can Google it. Let's Google it and see what it says. When do the Jews say, or wait, what year? Year do the Jews say creation was? Oh wow, looky there. 3761 BC, the date of creation. Hebrew chronology starts in 3761 BC. That math is getting pretty darn close to matching. For the creation of the world is described in the Old Testament. The Jewish calendar is lunisolar, based on the lunar months of 29 days alternating with 30. An extra month is intercalculated every 3 years based on a cycle of 19 years. So, since we know our math is off, and we know there's been changes along the way to the calendars, 3761 BC compared to 3968, I don't know, kind of close, y'all. We could certainly be off, and most people admit we're off by a few hundred years. And I did this from 2032 backing up 6,000 years. It puts it in the same time frame. So the math is starting to align. The math is matching. The counts are matching. What does this tell us? What is this telling us? We are in the season. We are in the season. So now let's take their year, 3761. Just because we're here. All right. So 3761 plus 6,000. Now you can't take 9761. That's not going to come out right. You actually have to calculate it forward to 0 and then calculate it forward from there to what we're at now. So that would mean, I'm terrible at math. So from here, we subtract 3761. That'd be 2, 4, well, it's still 6,000. Because 3761, that's about 4, that's right at 4,000. And then 2,000 for the Age of Grace starting at 0 or starting at 1 AD. It still matches because we're still there. It's 6,000 years. So it adds up. It's starting to connect. The math seems to calculate together. Forgive me, I'm terrible at some of this stuff. But what I'm trying to show you guys is what I'm seeing here. What I'm seeing in Scripture with Daniel 8, with the calculations, the date counts, doing the math from when Jesus ascended forward, looking at the whole time frame, it all starting to come down to this one single final point. We're there. This is it. So with the people out there are going to rage, okay, they can rage. But I'm looking at what this is saying. I'm looking at what the Bible is saying here. And that's encouraging to me. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. Like I said, I may be wrong. I may be completely wrong on all this. But it's encouraging. And it's stuff like that that keeps me going. It's stuff like that where it starts to match very closely to what the Bible is saying. It keeps me going. Amazing. Amazing. Guys, I appreciate y'all watching and considering this. Be a Berean. Look at it for yourself. Do your own research in prayer with the Lord and have Him show you what this stuff is. Let's see what you come up with. I'm telling you right now, Daniel 8, that I do not get it happened in the past at all, because it very clearly, in the second half of that chapter, says this is for the time of the end. Well, the end did not happen 2,500 years ago. The end has not happened yet. It's in the future, very near future. We're right on the cusp of it. So clearly Daniel 8 has got a lot to say and applies to right now. And with what we see going on in the world today, it is very much being fulfilled. All right, I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.